Good morning, everybody, and thanks for the invitation to come and speak to you all. It's great to have a real full audience, actually, of people who are really involved in all of this, to be able to influence or to be able to share the story of what's happening at a policy level. I'm kind of wishing I'd called this talk From Passion to Policy to Entitlement, because I'm really aware that what has happened over the last year or two, particularly through the work in the professional standards, is, as you say, Joyce, the final part of a jigsaw. And it's come from all the work and the passion of so many different organisations and individuals, people working away, and as you said, Joyce, where people weren't actually listening, but keeping going because you believed so passionately in what all this is about. And now what we're seeing is it's not any longer dependent, although it includes the passionate person. It's actually now embedded in policy. So it's not simply now down to single individuals who are battling away or organisations, but it's about that coming together and being recognised now as an entitlement for every child in Scotland. That's a massive journey to have made. And I came into it, I'm not an expert, as all of you are, although I believe in what all this is about. But one of the experiences that I'm eternally grateful for was I was fortunate enough to be part of the Natural Change project that some of you, I'm sure all of you will know about, through WWF and the Scottish Government. I was invited to go to Knoydart for a week and then a second week into Angus, and really with very little agenda. It was the best professional learning experience I've had. It was certainly the most challenging, but it had massive impact on me, probably in the sense of it's not just about knowing or knowledge, but that experiential learning, I couldn't have anticipated where that would take me and what it would also inspire me to do. And I would say one of the direct results, apart from many others, but one of them was to insist that outdoor learning, learning for sustainability, as we came to call the whole thing, should not just be a part of the new revised standards, but should underpin. Now, the move there was that sustainable development education and global citizenship, not outdoor learning, had been in the previous professional standards. The standard for initial teacher education, full registration, chartered teacher, and headship. Those were the old standards. Well, actually, they're still current till August 2014. But when they were placed in it in an adjectival way. So within our standards, what we had was people do global citizenship, they do enterprise education, they do sustainable development education, etc., etc. Now, that appeared to me to look like a slot, that you could put it into the curriculum, and there it was, and we ticked the box. My understanding deepened about all of this as being that it wasn't simply a curricular slot, though it is, but actually it was a way of thinking and a way of being, a way of behaving, and a way of building schools, teaching, curriculum, and out to the wider community, and indeed to being part of a Scottish democracy and the global world. They were all interconnected. So, when we now say learning for sustainability, and Alan will know this very well too, and others, this title was contested considerably. I was part of, obviously, I arranged that a sustainability advisory group would be set up to inform the writing of the new standards. Now, it was the only subgroup that existed in the writing of those standards. You can imagine many people wanted others, and very valid causes. But I managed to persuade our Chief Executive, Tony Finn, that in fact learning for sustainability was the most important. Because actually without that, you don't really have much else. And so a group was set up, and the group was in partnership with universities, local authorities, NGOs, etc., to see, and the basic job of that group was to bring their expertise and their passion to the writing groups who were writing each of the new standards, and I'll show you them in a minute, so that when the drafts were written, That group would have a look and say, right, where can we place learning for sustainability throughout the standards? So that was their job, to permeate the standards. We didn't know what it would look like, but I hope you'll agree when you see some examples of it. I have to say these slides are not as interesting as Joyce's. There are no pictures. It's all very dense text. However, I won't be reading it all out to you, you'll be pleased to know. The Learning for Sustainability name was what the General Teaching Council used for this process. Then we were part of the One Planet Schools group. Learning for Sustainability, as we understood it, was to encompass these areas and more. The One Planet Schools group was set up, and you'll be familiar with the report that was done. We were working on that as well. That's where the arguments actually came about using the Learning for Sustainability language. And that was really good because it really tested what we were doing and what did we mean. There was a strong argument to keep calling it global citizenship, primarily because of the amazing work that Education Scotland, in partnership with Glasgow University and many others, and had done already. But what I think we argued for, and in a sense it's working, if we called it Learning for Sustainability, firstly people would go, what? And secondly, there'd be more questions raised. But the other thing was we felt that Learning for Sustainability really incorporated more of the idea of the natural world and our codependence, interdependence with the natural world. Global citizenship did not seem to embrace all of that, or didn't obviously do that. And that if we used a new term, then perhaps people would do exactly what they are doing at the moment. What do you mean by that? And it's begun the debate again, and the interest. So, there's the definition that many of you will be familiar with about Learning for Sustainability. It's the one we've used in our standards. And the important part of it being in the standards, apart from the fact that it should be, is that if it's in the professional teaching standards, then it must be in the teacher education programmes, which the General Teaching Council accredit. So we are perfectly entitled in panels, when we're accrediting teacher education programmes, to ask questions about what is it, how have you addressed learning for sustainability? What are you doing about outdoor learning? Where are you building the skills, abilities, knowledge and pedagogies related to all of this? Now, it's not going to happen overnight. Some universities are much further ahead than others. There's already some amazing work going on. I know you'll hear about it today. I see Donald and Greg here as well, who will be talking about that. But it was to really bring it in a formal way and to have that entitlement to say, actually, it's not now an option or a choice or dependent on the skills and expertise and passion of individuals within universities, but actually it's got to be there because it's the entitlement for every teacher and every child in Scotland. Now that's a really important development. As I say, it won't happen overnight, but the culture shift will come. So, there are the standards that I've mentioned. The old ones were there. We had standards for initial teacher, full registration, charter teacher, and that's a whole other story about the demise of that one, and headship. Now what do we have? We have the standards for registration. These go live August 2014, but actually they're pretty well around now. These standards inform teacher education programmes, but they also inform professional learning and development for teachers. So therefore they inform the programmes that universities, local authorities, NGOs, other providers would offer. This gives, the fact that we've put learning sustainability in gives great credence, credibility to many of the programmes that already exist, and particularly programmes from SNH, from Play Scotland, etc. The Sustainability Development Network, I think, should feel empowered by the fact that they can put right into every learning programme they do the new standards, and that this is not something off the wall, it's part of teacher professionalism. Here are the new ones then, registration, and the big new one, career-long professional learning, which I'm going to talk a little bit about because I think really matches up to what you're doing. The standard for career-long learning is the first of its kind. You won't be surprised to know that we had quite a lot of battle over it. It's not a competence-driven standard. It's an aspirational one. It's based on professional learning and development. It's based around accomplishment, about the dispositions of a teacher, and about taking the opportunities perhaps to do master's learning, to develop areas of expertise. But essentially what we're saying is we're moving to the idea of career-long learning and career-long teacher education. That's the standard that will probably address the bulk of the teaching profession. Then we have the standards for leadership and management, and for the first time we have a layering of middle leadership. So we have 3 areas permeating our standards: learning for sustainability, leadership at all levels, and the other one, of course, you won't be surprised to know, values. I could do a whole other session on professional values, but I won't. When we wrote the values for all the new standards, we decided to make one statement that was for every teacher in Scotland. It didn't matter if you were a head teacher, if you were a teacher, a principal teacher, a faculty head, primary, secondary, or whatever. If you're a registered teacher in Scotland, the values apply to you. And that's HMI, that's university staff, local authority staff, whoever's a registered teacher. And I've made, obviously, sustainability and leadership. Let me give you an example of some of the values. I don't think any of those will be a surprise to you. The commitment in Scotland to social justice is deeply embedded within our democracy. And it's always been deeply embedded in our Scottish education system. I don't think there are any of us that didn't come into teaching who didn't think we could make a difference for children, but also for the society we live in, and particularly for those children and people living in the most challenging circumstances. Not actually getting that right in Scotland at the moment, but that's the commitment we've always made. Integrity, trust, respect. Okay, I want to just give one example. If I could have a wee read at that. Now, within that statement about integrity, where we've made a difference in the values this time is we've added on the critical reflection. What we didn't want to write were platitudes. I often use this example of if I was to ask everybody here and probably everybody on a bus, do you want world peace? Everybody else say, yes, of course we do. But we don't have it. And we don't have it because we're not able. And we need to critically reflect on all of that. It's not going to happen by simply stating it. When we talk about honesty, courage, and wisdom, we need to also critically reflect on who we are as teachers. Where we started off as teachers, sometimes we're much more courageous at the beginning than we are 10 years down the line. We know that teachers, from the work of Professor Chris Day, suffer dips in their stories. One of them is between the years of, and I mean teaching years, 8 to 14, and then 24 to 30. There are dips that take place in their stories. And from their stories, which were extensive across the UK, it was evident sometimes they got tired, they got cynical, they became too compliant, or life kicked in as well, stories from family life, or perhaps being in the school too long, one stage too long, not perhaps experimenting or being adventurous with new pedagogies, all sorts of things. But what they did say was when they re-engaged with their values again and tried to critically reflect on why they'd become teachers in the first place, they felt re-energised. That's a really important message for PRD and for teacher educators, that the values are actually so important to keep engaging with at all points through our career. Okay, really boring, dense text. That's the standard for career-long learning purpose. I'm only going to look at 3 words there: reflective, accomplished, and inquiring. That's learning for sustainability. These are the dispositions that we will need. Within the standard for career-long professional learning, we've moved from teachers being reflective practitioners to take that just a bit further and talk about inquiring practitioners. So professional inquiry is at the heart of this standard. Inquiry is at the heart of a lot of the work that you're all involved in. It also aligns with the recommendations from Teaching Scotland's Future. So what I'm trying to get at here is that in Scotland we're in quite a unique place at the moment, and I hope to God we take it and run with it. I think that's yet to be seen. We've got people's real strong commitment and passion. We've got the whole concept and practice of inquiry, and we know the deep transformation that can make for learners and for teachers. We've got policy aligning with that. And we've got government that actually agrees with it. Now, that's not all perfect, but it's a pretty good place to be sitting in. My hope, and I think we all have to be part of this, is to ensure that that's driven forward and taken on board through the National Implementation Board that's meeting just now, and through the implementation of the recommendations of Teaching Scotland's Future, which that will report on. But I think we all have a duty to make sure that we don't sell out on a lot of the great ideas and visions we've got. The last part of that paragraph there, if you think about it, sometimes we're accused, and I'm thinking about the classroom, Walter Hume saying their schools are modelled on prisons, to go outward looking, not inward facing. The last lines there, the world beyond the profession, to enhance the learning experience of all learners in their schools, but in the contemporary world they live in. I think that's really important that we're outward. We're talking about youngsters living in the society they live in, locally, nationally, and globally, and making those connections. Okay. Here are some of the dispositions that are expected within the standard for career-long professional learning. All of those would also be expected and part of the work you do in outdoor learning, in global learning, in sustainable development. The adaptive expert. Now, we're not going to become that, we're in the process of it. But basically what we're saying is being open to new ways, to new ideas, to new pedagogies. But also crucially, and this is a lot of the work of Helen Timperley in New Zealand and Linda Darling-Hammond from America, when the same old doesn't work, stop doing it. How often, and gosh, taught for many, many years and did this myself, we fall into a trap of, well, we know it's not working, but we'll just keep going anyway. Maybe the primary 3 teacher will sort it out. Or, oh, do you know what, when they get to second year, it'll click. Well, actually, it doesn't. We need to find new ways, new pedagogies, new ways of being able to help and enable children to learn. I would argue that a lot of the pedagogies associated particularly with outdoor learning are completely ripe for that. Knowledge creators, when you're working with children and young people, I see some of the photos there, Joyce, knowledge is being created. Some people think it's only universities that create knowledge. Well, no, actually, it's not. Teachers do, and young people do. Practitioner inquiries, I'd ask you to look at our website, the General Teaching Council, a whole project up there over 2 to 3 years about the strengths and challenges of doing practitioner inquiry, really worth looking at. Critical thinkers, all of that's familiar to you. I put it up not to go into them all in depth, but to show you the way, the direction of that standard is going. That then will need to be seen in learning programmes and in teacher education programmes. Okay. Again, that's back to align with the One Planet Schools understanding of learning for sustainability. And it's embedded within the Standard for Career-Long Learning and the others. So, what does it look like? I'm just going to put up some examples of how it's reflected within the standards. That's a first ever that we had this in, valuing cultural, ecological diversity. We did have about local and global citizenship, but the words culture and ecological diversity were never in the standards before. That's a big step forward. learning our way to a better future. When I first started teaching many years ago, I've referred to really thinking we could make a difference, but there was a great deal of activism too. And really feeling that when it was about justice, it was about peace, it was about building a better world. I think somewhere along the line that died a little bit as the years went on for all sorts of reasons that we could analyse. But it's trying to bring that back in, that political literacy, that building the political and social skills in our young people and actually in our teachers, because that is our responsibility too as teachers, to help our youngsters, to empower them, to learn their way to a better future for us and for the next generation. That involves politics. And I think it's something I know from working on headship programmes, and that often that's the part in the standard that many teachers find the most difficult, to actually demonstrate political literacy and understanding. And actually, if you think about it, for every teacher and head teacher, it's absolutely vital. Again, more dense text, but it's just to give you a flavour of how it's worded. The dependence on the natural world was never there before. Now, think, if you took that as a quote for many of the programmes you're running or the ideas that are being, what you can do is create the policy and the practice and make the links for the teacher. So the teachers now can see, this is actually what I'm supposed to be doing. And this is part of my professionalism. This is part of what I do to meet professional standards. This is what I can demonstrate in my PRD. This is what I can demonstrate when I go for professional update, which is based on professional learning. All of this is valid work. The just and equitable world, I don't think we had that in standards before. And the interconnectedness of all those areas, very familiar to all of you. But I hope you think that it's good to see it within the standards and the expectations of the professionalism of teachers in Scotland. I have to say, it's being looked at by quite a few other parts of the world because I don't think it's been done before. Wait to see if I'm wrong there, but I don't think it has. The last part there is really important, and that's where you have your expertise, appropriate pedagogies. If learning outdoors, the pedagogy might be different from what you're doing indoors. And it's equipping and supporting teachers with those skills and abilities to move from the indoors to the outdoors. As you all know, it doesn't need to be up a mountain. It could be out in the playground. But that idea of teaching and the pedagogies associated with outdoor learning would be really important. And it would actually be good to see a lot more professional learning programmes to support that emerging for teachers in Scotland. I think that's it. Those standards, I've said, go live in August, but we're already building it in. What I would say to you is, in any programmes you're developing, whether it's university, local authority, or from the organisations you represent, in the rationale for your programme, put right into the heart of that the standards for Scottish teachers, so that the connections are made. For the teacher, for the school, and for the local authority. This is not now something that's out there. It's right in the heart of professionalism in Scotland. So put it in. And the other thing I draw your attention to is the professional recognition framework. We can recognise teachers at the General Teaching Council on an individual level for areas of expertise they have developed. We have several outstanding applications on outdoor learning. They are just outstanding. We've also had equally outstanding submissions made to us from the global learning world. I mean, just the work is inspirational that teachers have done with providers. And it's all varying levels. And as I've read those applications and submissions, not only have I been inspired and moved, but I can assure you it's right at the heart of the Learning for Sustainability agenda, and that these young people are being offered opportunities like this, and teachers, is just incredible. The other thing we can do is we can accredit a programme. So if you have a programme of learning that is sustained, has some academic input. Now that could be from an external partner, or it could also be from the reading that you're organising and tutoring. Have a look on our website in August, but if any of you want them just now, email me and I'll send the guidelines to you. We can now accredit a whole programme with professional recognition in whatever title is appropriate. It could be outdoor learning, it could be global learning. That would mean that if your programme gets that, then the teachers don't have to apply individually. But when they complete your programme, you would tell us who's been successful, and we would award professional recognition in that area. So I think that the thing I'm really sort of trying to pull together here is the passion that we all have, now into policy, into entitlement for every teacher and learner in Scotland, and the potential for recognition of all of that within the professional body that teachers are part of.